Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. It's about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the newest album, the debut album from Shawn Mendes, titled Handwritten. Now, I might have said in my last episode of Billboard Breakdown that Vine was one of the worst things in recent memory to happen to mainstream hip-hop, and I do stand by that statement. But that's not to dismiss Vine's growing impact on pop music as well, where certain acts trending toward a bit of a younger demographic have earned some degree of success. And you know, on some level that makes sense, as attention spans grow shorter and shorter seemingly with every generation, and pop music perpetually lodged at the age of early teens, it makes sense that Vine could spawn material perfectly tailored for that audience. And that's not saying that music from these sources is essentially bad either, or even tells a complete story. More of that comes through in the rising fortunes of Ed Sheeran, the singer-songwriter who is slowly taking more and more steps, thankfully, away from dreary white guy with acoustic guitar material into tighter, more groove-heavy, more fiery and soulful material. And given how much he has just dominated the charts over the past year, and with singer-songwriters like, say, Hozier pushing a more organic, rough-edge sound, it stands to reason the music industry would look to cash in on this trend in the quickest way possible. And thus we got Shawn Mendes, a Canadian teenager from just outside Toronto who built up a following on Vine and has just been tearing a swath through the Canadian charts. Now keep in mind that our radio stations have to play a certain percentage of Canadian music, so I have heard of Shawn Mendes before this review, and honestly from the little bit I heard I didn't mind him. I mean sure, there were moments I could use some polish, but there was some raw talent there, and he sure as hell sounded more ready for prime time than Justin Bieber ever did around 2009 back when he was coming out. And hell, if he's gonna bite from Ed Sheeran's template to the one element from Vine that I actually think could be a net positive, a sense of immediacy and pop-friendly punch in his hooks, this debut album could actually be worth a damn, even if it didn't write the whole record. So I checked out Handwritten. Did it live up to my expectations? Well, in the sense that I barely had any expectations at all, I guess it lived up to them, but to be fair, Handwritten by Shawn Mendes, it's okay, I guess, with enough good songs to save it from the bad stuff, at least for me. But what frustrated me is that for as many times I listened through this album, I couldn't help but see the glaring influences and the major label behind the record trying to synthesize another Canadian teen pop star fit for mainstream radio. And the more I listened to it, the more I heard it, and honestly, it got distracting. So let's talk about Shawn Mendes here. And honestly, having listened to him multiple times, I'm a little bit conflicted now. The easy comparison point is Justin Bieber in terms of the vocals. And while he's nowhere near as slick or shows off the same range, Shawn Mendes has a rougher, more folk-inspired cadence that I actually like more. More importantly, he sounds sincere, earnest, and actually ready for prime time. His voice will still need a little bit more time to build the richness and organic flavor that acoustic folk does need, but he does have the seeds of some real charisma here. He could really grow into a really potent artist. Now, granted, there are moments that do need more polish. Getting a firmer hand on that falsetto, that will come with training and time. And he's at least smart enough on the sound to stick with lower, more fuller tones that suit his voice. But at this point, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room because it's impossible to notice otherwise. The reason why Bieber is the easy comparison, because just like Justin Bieber, Shawn Mendes really wants to be Justin Timberlake. Except while Justin Bieber went through the process of going through it through pop and R&B, Shawn Mendes is basically following Ed Sheeran following Justin Timberlake, filtered to a very teenage sensibility. Or at least at some points he is, because I sure as hell prefer that to the Sam Smith impression that he does on tracks like I Don't Even Know Your Name, which strikes me as just the complete wrong direction for him. I mean, Shawn Mendes has a looseness to his delivery that works with those tighter grooves, and trying to add stiffer presentation, I'm sorry, it does not work at all. The larger issue here, though, with Shawn Mendes comes in his emotive presence, and this is where his age unfortunately kind of works against him, because he can come across having a very limited range. He conveys exuberance and love-struck sincerity very well, but when the songs aim for framing and situations that are a little bit more complicated, he can start running into problems. And this is where we need to address the songwriting pretty early. And look, it's the same case of when I reviewed 5 Seconds to Summer's self-titled debut album last year. It's very clear that Shawn Mendes is targeting a much younger audience than me, and thus some of these songs, a lot of them will probably resonate. And this is speaking as somebody who's not really a fan of the whole white guy with acoustic guitar subgenre as it is. Although I can say I buy into Shawn Mendes' sincerity a hell of a lot more than I ever bought into John Mayer. But when the situations get more complicated, the writing doesn't always do enough to really compensate for that. I mean, I can excuse Stitches, the song where he's tripping all over himself in love, which can lead to rough consequences when the love is gone. But Strings, it tries to draw the childhood romance way too early, and it just comes across as kind of awkward awkward and kind of creepy, especially considering he's talking about a more serious commitment. It's starting as early as around 3 years old. No. And Aftertaste is even worse. A song slamming an ex who dumped him and is now regretting it and wants to come back. And it's hard to buy into that raw pettiness of the song. It doesn't sound good, especially with his delivery. At least in the duet Air, he's smart enough to frame the situation from both sides and showing how this couple probably really shouldn't be together at this stage of their lives. But his duet partner Astrid sounds even younger than him. Unfortunately, to the song's detriment, it doesn't really work. Outside of that, we've got songs like Never Be Alone and A Little Too Much that are clearly laser targeted for marketing to his teen fan base, with the latter playing the One Direction What Makes You Beautiful card that always just rubs me the wrong way and playing in on those insecurities. And in between that, we've got an assortment of acoustic love songs and some yearning ballads of varying quality, and we also got Something Big, easily the best track on the album because it has a pulse. Yeah, I don't even know your name, it's got some presence, but I've got a hard time buying into such heavy passion and exuberance to somebody that he has never met and barely even seen. Even as a teenager, that just goes too far. And this feeds into the most frustrating thing about this album, the instrumentation. Now, put aside some of the clumsy songwriting and the forced rhymes, I went into this album at least hoping Something Big would be indicative of more energy and color and personality on this record, and we didn't get that. Most of this record is stripped back pianos and guitars, and to his credit, while the melodies do come through beyond the thicker, heavier percussion in the drums, and there is some texture to them, they're rarely anything that's special or energetic or that you wouldn't hear with more innovative progressions on an Ed Sheeran record or an acoustic cut from Justin Timberlake a decade ago, or even in some cases from Jason Mraz. That's not saying that there aren't moments that I do like. The acoustic groove on Stitches, the whistles against the gentle and smooth guitars on Never Be Alone, that was kind of pretty, and the fast-paced rollicking strums of Strings or the springier Aftertaste. But it's rare that the record develops any sort of edge or kick to it, let alone the tempo to come close to that. The biggest would probably be on the bombast of Something Big with the horns and the rougher breakdown in the bridge and that jangling percussion and the heavier kick drums. But even with that, the production is so smooth and slick that I get no bite or fire to the song or even the entire album. To some extent, it feels as if I'm getting a sanitized version of Ed Sheeran doing Justin Timberlake. And unfortunately, Shawn Mendes has work to do before he even gets to that level. So in the end, look guys, I don't hate this album by any stretch, and I'm sure members of the target audience will absolutely love this, but it's hard for me not to see this record as just a pretty thin attempt by the record label to cash in on a Vine star who might sound mostly ready for prime time vocally, but not quite have the songwriting or compositional skills or developed yet to get there at this point. And the alarming thing is that the arsenal of songwriters didn't help him there. Now, to some extent, the album does aim a little bit lower when it comes to its simpler love songs. There's nothing wrong with that, but much of this album just doesn't stand out to me, especially on the back half, which really did drag. It didn't quite put me to sleep in the same way that Troye Sivan's record did, but outside of Something Big, this record just doesn't do a lot for me. I'm thinking a strong 5 out of 10 and only a recommendation if you're looking for more sentimental or quiet side of Ed Sheeran, or just too young to dig into mid-2000s Justin Timberlake. Otherwise, yeah, I'm sorry, I'd skip this. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Please keep it civil in the comments. He's just not for me. If you're a fan of him, that's good for you. It's all my opinion after all. But if there's anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give them a listen. Until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.